Commentary, reflections, and treatment on the Kena Upanishad. Now first, I think it's important, as we come into acquaintance with the expression and the modes and meanings of expression of these margins, that we appreciate what has been said by many, and has been said by Aurobindo, that which make an organic whole, that which gave the substance and merit and depth of communication to these Upanishads, were in a very important margin reawakenings, re-rousings to the uncaused cause of truth, the eternal in the transient, which, as the full essence of participation, revelation, and realization of treatment, had formed the center stock of the communications of the most profound sages that we find in the Rig Veda. And so the images, the conceptions, the workings out, in large measure are recollections back to that undivorced presence and truth, and they frankly express themselves as such. As such, they are excogitations, they are contemplations, feeling out in the hands this already received witness and connection and truth that they're trying to give connection of spirit to in a situation in which they think people have come to accidental misinterpretation and alignment. And so that is most essential, because you can find, I think, equally pregnant and potent, if not more so, passages in, say, the 9th sukta of the hymns of Bharadwaj, with the same moment of communion and rapture that we'll find herein. But here you have an unfolding process of contemplation and reflection within the circumstance of that which provided the material for this community of recollection. And that does not take away from their meaning and moment and worth. But I think what partly has held back so much treatment of these things was that when Europeans first became acquainted with the Upanishads and these ancient literatures, of course they carried their prejudices and premonitions that what they were treating were tracts of a barbarian race, into, even when they were most sympathetic, the way they regarded them. So the majority of the translations of the poems or meditations or hymns of the Rig Veda that are of importance that I first saw didn't appreciate the subtlety and conceptual depth, the unbridled natural sophistication of fulfillment of reality and purpose that lived in them, but considered that it was treating objects that belonged to a barbaric prehistoric people who, when they said sacrifice, when they said fire, meant gross inert things, didn't mean the integration to that which is the universal cause and presence of all manifestation and happening, and which exceeds the accidents of things. And therefore, when in the hymns of Bharadwaj or Grit Samad or Parashara, they say that this fire is seated and born as the perfect child and truth of presence of the waters, of the stone, of the forests, all these images, the forests of the many, the water of process, the stone of cogent stability, of this being at the same time the guest in our home, and the truth in the inner heart, and the immortal light set within in creatures, which guides them on the way. These cannot be understood in gross and accidental terms. Their sophistication is exceedingly universal, natural, and profound. And these tracts formed the cultural fabric in which direct and universal inspired and individual association formed these traditions of hermitages or direct association of the truth of asceticism, the truth of purification, the truth of integral coming to health and realization and enlivenment was to be sought in the way and in the echo and in the recollection of the holy presence that had been gone before and which found fulfilled expression and utterance in these profound inspirations and raptures and marvels. So understanding that first, I think, is most important. And secondarily, that as unfoldings, as excogitations, as this, the Upanishads are feeling out a truth that they are completely convinced of. So when someone unfolds the conditions of mathematical natural philosophy, they're not proving to you what it is or what it can do. They're operating within those terms to the fulfillment of its conception and margin. And so to a degree, there is definitely the same principle and premise of forming a life herein, that they're operating within the clarity of conceived resolution that formed the basis of their engagement and interaction in an alive, prescient, and purposeful way that gave to the whole of the expression of these things. So turning to it, the Kena Upanishad. By whom missioned falls the mind shot to its mark, by whom yoked moves the first life breath forward on its paths, by whom impelled is this word that men speak. What God set eye and ear to their workings. So in this idea of this unconditioned and universal cause, they awoke to this as the epicenter of realization, integration, and fulfillment, and therefore calling into its own witness and presence and fulfillment of realization and motion. The end, the perfect realization, the perfect child, which is the inhabitant and eternal unto its own eternity, becomes at the same time the fulfillment of the cause. So, by whom missioned falls the mind shot to its mark. What is this realization and recollection, and what does it inhabit in and of and through? By whom yoked moves the first life breath, this animating completeness which fills all our sinews and energy on its paths? By whom impelled is this word that men speak? What is this being the reality of inspiration and conception at the basis of all of our communication and origin? What God set eye and ear to their workings? Why are we called to this fulfilled acquaintance at things? And so it is opening the drumbeat which comes to the peace of seeing the universal and uncaused as the full situational and essence of margin. That which is hearing of our hearing, mind of our mind, speech of our speech, that too is life of our life breath and sight of our sight. The wise are released beyond, and they pass from this world and become immortal. And so in the same way as the unfolding of the functioning of a leaf exists in direct union of presence with that which is superior to it and utilizes it, so this unconditioned and uncaused, fully inherited and realized, by realizing that which is the hearing of our hearing, the mind of our mind, the speech of our speech, beyond their accidents. This is the life breath of our life breath and sight of our sight. It is continent. It is inclusive. The universal is not alienated and cannot be known by accidents, but these are all the witness of the swishing tail in the wake of its revelation and forming. And where is that to which we are called? There sight travels not, nor speech, nor the mind. We know it not, nor can distinguish how one should teach of it, for it is other than the known. It is there above the unknown. It is, so we have heard from men of old who declared that to our understanding. So this is a transparent reference to those essences that are contained of the expressions of those sages in the Rig Veda. And here, I think, is in an alignment very akin to that in the Isha, a reconciliation and resolution of the flux to that which is the full purpose and presence. So we don't know, we don't possess the uncaused cause, but it is not unknown. It takes the full and continent, full entirety. The function is unparted from that which the function is for. And it's beyond the accidental acquaintance. There sight travels not, nor speech, nor the mind, the accidents of narrow mediate functioning and happening. And we know it not, so it's beyond our possessing, nor can distinguish how one should teach of it. Its way comes unto itself, for it is other than the known, and yet it is there above the unknown. So it takes something beyond our narrow will of instantiated happening. It is so we have heard from the men of old, who have declared that to our understanding. That which is unexpressed by the word, that by which the word is expressed. Know that to be the Brahman, and not this which men follow after here. So this internal competency, this internal connection of happening, that which gives the full unalienated life of the acorn to the acorn, which gives the full capacity of expression in the word, and its realizing expression in the word, but is beyond the narrow expressions of the word. That is the truth of that ingenerable and eternal. Know that to be Brahman, not this which men follow after here. That which thinks not by the mind, that by which the mind is thought. Know that to be the Brahman, and not that this which men follow after here. So in some of the culminating passages of, for instance, the Katha Upanishad, does the light exist by borrowed reflection? If there's reflection, reflection must exist in the situation of that which receives, perfects, and reflects itself. And so that which is the fulfilled use and functioning of the entire purpose and being and dimension of the mind, but it is not thought by the mind, that is this truth, this universal and nascent alignment, this unconditional suchness of unseparated continuum, not that which people think is that here. That which sees not with the eye, that by which one sees the eye's seeings. Know that to be the Brahman, and not this which men follow after here. That which hears not with the ear, that by which the ear's hearing is heard. Know that to be the Brahman, and not this which men follow after here. That which breathes not with the breath, that by which the life breath is led forward on its paths. Know that to be the Brahman, and not that which men follow after here. So I think it's important to make a note as well that the living depth and dignity of interior realization and content in the way we treat it is conditioned by the preconceptions we draw to it. We don't, for instance, think that what's happening in the mind of Galileo or of Newton or maybe of Socrates, depending of how enlightened we are, only is a relation to their narrow state and expression and margin. We see a universal truth, an unconditioned, inspiring inheritance that is beyond the accidents of station, rousing unto itself in them. What we can learn therein is a truth of the universe, a truth of the foundation of our being in essence and origin. And its importance and its imperative is far beyond the accidents of its expression and state, and gives the full meaning and merit and basis for that which inspires it. Second part. If thou thinkest that thou knowest it well, little indeed dost thou know the form of the Brahman. So if it transcends and is immanent and eminent in being both the form and the formless, the foundations and the communion of recollection and cause of all being, then you cannot think that you've held it down, that you've possessed it. It requires full inspiration, just as full life and universality of inner communion of access is required to pivot and orient to the truth and soul and substance of things. But we cannot hold down that which it is to live, and that which it is to live to its fullest fruition is to come to realization and fulfillment of the ground of our mind and soul and being and station. So if thou thinkest thou knowest it well, little indeed dost thou know the form, the measures and self-expression of this essence of margin of the Brahman. That of it which is thou, that of it which is in the divine dimensions, the gods, this thou hast to think out. So how is it in all these things and yet beyond all these things? How is it to be awoken to? This need for interior realization to the full measure of your being and truth, this is the pivot that is necessary to come unto the inspiration of self and soul and station. It has to be awoken, it has to be accessed, and I think it known. Somewhere and somehow in your full dimension and full state of association, it is known. It is to be awoken, as the dawn foreshadows the day. So there's a premonition, an intuition, that gives the eye of intuition to the sacrifice, in a phrase from the Vedas, that gives the full continent unison of the fulfilled parameter of happening to that which has to recall it. That of it which is thou, that is the full you in all your human fullness, that of it which is in the divine dimensions and the gods, this thou hast to think out, to realize, to work to its fulfillment, to fruition and station. I think it known. I think not that I know it well, and yet I know that it is not unknown to me. So, for instance, as I said in some of my discussions of Parashara and Bharadwaj, it was perennially ever and again seeing that there is no difference here, that the eminent is manifest, that the uncreate is created, that there is no division between the above and the below. So this direct pivoting realization of that which is of the whole and entire and directness of things Just to know that we have that access, just to know that we have that essential and purifying alignment, is of universal importance and state. We don't think we know it well yet, as all the greatest minds don't think that they've fulfilled in its revelation and functioning and forming. And yet we know that it is not unknown and not inaccessible and not incapable of being realized or served or integrated in us. He of us who knows it knows that which is to be known, this truth of Brahman. He knows that it is not unknown to him. It becomes like the superior principle which takes his full capacity of functioning and richness, that takes his full revel in rapture, being in bliss and beauty, the entire suchness at the heart and soul and recollection of witness to its fulfilled purpose of reality that exceeds any possibility of functioning part in that which is its inspiring whole. He by whom it is not thought out has the thought of it. So he who has not taken it to pieces, who has not made the eternal perfection of the harmony of the whole of things broken into things that aren't that harmony of that universal whole, those who see the full as both the truth in eminence and the truth in inhabiting presence, they whom it is not thought out has the thought of it. They've come unto this presence and key. He by whom it is thought out, broken into many divisions, has lost the truth, has named the wave, but missed the entire reality of the water, which is the entire wave's reality. He by whom it is thought out knows it not. It is unknown to the discernment of those who discern it. By those who seek not to discern of it, it is discerned. So it is not by discrimination, not by hollow contrivances of mind, but those who abandon all such things and only awaken whole and whole, equal on equal, original on original, purposeful and complete and entire, they give the full eye of intuition to the rousing of that which it is for. It is unknown to the discernment of those who discern of it. By those who seek not to discern of it, it is discerned. When it is known by perception that reflects it, then one has the thought of it, for one finds immortality. So exactly as I said, and I think as has to be roused, the fulfilled fruition and functioning of happening of this uncaused cause, which can give the eye of intuition the fullness of the full dimension of life and reality of things to be continent presences and purposes, knows that the reflection and the alive presence of reflection is for that which is its full communion, connection, consolidation, and truth of being and of cause. So when it is known by perception that reflects it, when the eternal light in the heart of creatures can be awoken to that full immersion of purity, when it is known by the full association of the life force of the full dimension of our being, to be reflecting that which reflects it, this eternal ingenerable, then, and in this way, one has the thought of it. For one finds the ingenerable, the uncaused, the eternal, which gives meaning, message, consolidation and truth, which gives the center pivot and stalk that sees beyond the branched happenings to that which is their full life. By the self one finds the force to attain, and by the knowledge one finds immortality. So in this unconditional existence, in this Brahman, by the truth of your own self-nature therein, one attains the energy of fulfilling communion. And by the fulfilled integration of that entire measure of knowing and witness and consciousness, one finds and connects past the web to the parent of the web in the germ of truth, of the ingenerable, of the immortality. If here one comes to that knowledge, then one truly is. So when, in the words of several of the portions of the Rig Veda, when has one achieved the purpose of their existence? When has one achieved the sacrifice? When the full functioning of that function to that which it truly is reflected, inhabited, called home, called to completeness, bringing the eternal universal to its present and now. And so when this same measure of association, which has given these pointers for these communing communities, has been brought unto such a state, then if we come to that knowledge, then one truly is. One is to the integral full reality of this universal fullness in ourselves. If here one comes not to that knowledge, if in this birth, in this reality, we are not attained to this full measure of witness and communion and state, then great is the perdition. For, as I said, if there is a universal that is the full continent presence of reality in its instantiations of particulars, then everything relates to that and through that. If you don't fulfill it, its lack of fulfillment will persecute you. If we don't live to the full function of meaning integrally, then broken dislocation will find no ground to stand on, will be grasping at shadows and dislocated in errors. The wise distinguish that in all kinds of becomings, and they pass forward from this world and become immortal. So that which is this whole occasion, this whole means of association and truth of margin, distinguishing that, those who are wise, they pass from these narrow instantiations and come to the eternal truth and ingenerable. So here, in the third part, we come to all these meditations, all these instances of soul and witness and rapture are not beholden to the accidents of that passing witness. They turn something in their hands over in one way to the eternal truth, and then they turn it over in another way in order to come into deepening and deepening, fulfilling acquaintance and margin. So here what was pointed to in the terms that we've discussed now takes the form of a parable, of a story, of an image in which all the dimensions of functioning come to the witnessing principle of full reality and union and truth. That all dimensions fall under that one primary recognition. The eternal conquered for the gods, and in the victory of the eternal, the gods grew to greatness. So this eternal uncaused cause gaining its own victory gives the premise within which all divine dimensions come to witness and forming. This was what they saw. Ours the victory, ours the greatness. So all these divine dimensions think, it is ours, it is ours. They still have a connection of possession, even in the premise of this universal, which is its truth. The eternal knew their thought, and appeared before them, and they knew not what was this mighty daemon. So, realizing that they are filled with narrow pride and conceit. It's going to give them the truth of real realization and witness. They said to Agni, O thou knowest that all things born learn of this thing, what may be this mighty demon? And he said, So be it. So he rushed towards the Eternal, and it said to him, Who art thou? I am Agni, he said. I am he that knows all things born. Since such thou art, what is the force in thee? Even all this I could burn, all that is upon the earth. The Eternal set before him a blade of grass. This burn. And he made towards it with all his speed. But he could not burn it. There he ceased, and turned back. I could not know of it. What might be this mighty daemon? Then they said to Vayu, O Vayu, this discern, what is this mighty demon? He said, So be it. He rushed upon that. It said to him, Who art thou? I am Vayu, he said, and I am he that expands in the mother of things. Since such thou art, what force is in thee? Even all this I can take for myself, all that is upon the earth. That set before him a blade of grass. This take. He went towards it with all his speed, and he could not take it. Even there he ceased, and thence he returned. I could not discern of that. What is this mighty daemon? Then they said to Indra, Master of Plentitudes, Get thou the knowledge, what is this mighty daemon? He said, So be it. He rushed upon that. That vanished from before him. He in the same ether came upon the woman, even upon her who shines out in many forms, Uma, daughter of the snowy summits. To her he said, What was this mighty daemon? She said to him, It is the Eternal. Of the Eternal is this victory, in which ye shall grow to greatness. Then alone he came to know that this was the Brahman. Therefore are these gods, as it were, beyond all the other gods, even Agni and Vayu and Indra, because they came nearest to the touch of that. Therefore is Indra, as it were, beyond all the other gods, because he came nearest to the touch of that, because he first knew that it was Brahman. And so all the dimensions exist within this universal, uncreate creation, this uncaused cause, whose presence is the basis of the victory of all happenings. And so just as in the free and fluid expression of the sages in the Rig Veda, they say this universal truth and soul and presence is the truth of all these divine dimensions. In the first hymn that we have associated to Grit Samad, that constitutes the call and the communication to the call, the communion and the sacrifice, the annunciation and the altar, all of these things that are clarified unto its own self. So this is the eternal in its own eternity, which is the full inmost truth and self of things, that all of these universal capacities and divine faces and dimensions, at their highest, come to recognition and witness of it, and cannot touch the slightest thing that it is the inner fiber and truth of in this parable. Now this is the indication of that, as is this flash of the lightning upon us, or as is this falling of the eyelid, so in that which is the gods. So all their happenings, like the wedding unto sameness of the fusion of the divine thought, of the divine mind and fire. They are like the lightning. They are like the blinking of the one eternal premise of seeing and sameness. Then in that which is the self, as the motion of this mind seems to attain to that, and by it afterwards the will in the thought continually remembers it. The name of that is that delight. As that delight one should follow after it, the full reliance on that, the full revel and rapture beyond the margins of disassociation. In the words of the Chinese tradition, there can be no separation. He who knows that, towards him all verily existences yearn. Thou hast said, speak to me, Upanishad. Spoken to thee is Upanishad. Of the eternal verily is the Upanishad that we have spoken. Of this knowledge, austerity and self-conquest and works are the foundation. The Vedas are its limbs. Truth is its dwelling place. He who knows this knowledge smites evil away from him, and in that vaster world and infinite heaven finds his foundation. He finds his foundation. So coming to this rousing of conception and consciousness of that towards which this whole expression points, that is the purpose for which purification to the realization of life, of communication and realization and expression is hinged and founded. And so, for this community, for these traditions, this became the rousing and recollection to that which they unfold to fulfillment and communication of happening, not just for ourselves, but for themselves and for the life and spirit and truth that can likewise gain unto the heart of all ages.